The most popular potted plant during the Christmas season is without a doubt the poinsettia. And maybe you've wondered how these shrubby milkweeds from Mexico got to be so popular. Well, it all started back in the 50s and 60s when popular TV programs like Dinah Shore and the Johnny Carson Show used to use these plants in their set decorations. Lots of people watched the programs, they really liked the plants, and they've been growing in popularity ever since. Well, they're so popular that each year here in the United States, about $250 million worth of poinsettias are purchased in about a 6-week period. And that's an awful lot of plants. Well, here at OSU, we do research in some of our greenhouses every year just to kind of evaluate the new varieties. Well, here to tell us about the program is one of my former professors and current faculty members, Dr. Janet Cole.
Hi, Steve. Welcome to the 2001 OSU Poinsettia Trial.
Welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Cole, before we get into the how the program works here, we always get a few questions every year about poinsettias. And the number one question is, are poinsettias poisonous?
Actually, poinsettias are not considered extremely poisonous. Of course, they do have a milky sap that if you break the stems, that sap can get on your hands, and it can sometimes cause some irritation to the skin. If you ate a whole bunch, lots and lots of poinsettias, you might get a little sick, but they're really not considered extremely poisonous.
Okay, well that's good news.
Yeah.
Another question we get a lot is where does the color come from? Some people say this is a flower, other people say, well, that looks a lot like a leaf. What exactly is this?
All right, well, the flowers are actually these little things right here in the center of the color, so they're pretty nondescript as far as flowers go. The color actually comes from the bracts. That's the very colorful part, and then of course the leaves are the green part. So you're not truly looking at flowers there when you see the color, you're seeing the bracts.
Okay. Well, now that we've got that out of the way, can you just explain a little bit about the program, what all is involved in our trials here?
Sure. Each year we talk to the breeders of poinsettias around the country, and there are basically 5 breeders or distributors that donate plants to us to test each year. Some of these plants are new plants that are not yet on the market. Some are old industry standards that we put in the trial so that we have a comparison between the new ones and ones that are currently acceptable in the marketplace. This year we've got about 74 cultivars in the trial, and those cultivars are from 3 different companies that have donated the plants. We start the plants in August. They come into us as rooted cuttings, and we pot them up and grow them through the fall season just as a commercial grower would grow them. During the Christmas season, of course, when they come into flower, then we take some data on them, including flowering date, so that we know which ones are early flowers and which ones are later flowers. We take heights, we take widths, because of course there are size differences between different cultivars and so on. Now, one thing that we do differently with our trial than what a commercial grower would do is that we do not use any growth regulators. Our purpose with this trial is really to show the growers what the differences between the plants would be under typical growing conditions without applying the growth regulators. So they're going to see some that are very tall, they're going to see some that are very short, and then they can make the decisions themselves once these come on the market whether they want to apply those growth regulators and regulate the size or not.
Okay, and that may make a difference depending on how large a pot they may want to offer those in and things like that.
Right.
Okay. Well, I guess the color red is still the most popular color of poinsettia.
Yes, red is the traditional poinsettia color. That's the one that most people look for when they go to buy poinsettias. But you know, red is not always red.
Okay.
And so what I thought I'd do here is show you some of the differences that I've seen in our trial in some of the reds. And you see I've got a variety of plants here that are probably considered red.
Yeah.
And we've got a series here. These are all members of the Freedom series.
Okay.
This one in the front is Freedom Red, and this is Freedom Bright Red. And you can see this one's a little bit lighter red in color than the Freedom Red.
Almost has more of an orangish
Yeah, it
color.
does. Almost getting to OSU orange here. Not quite, but almost. And then we've got one here that's got a little bit more pink in it. Would probably still be considered a red, but it's got a lot of pink there. That one's Freedom Rose.
Okay.
And so it's kind of a transition between our reds and our pinks. Now over here we've got a couple that are not members of the Freedom series. This front one here is called Holly Point. And what I wanted to point out here is, you notice with these others we've got all green leaves. Well, leaves don't necessarily always come green.
Okay.
There are variegated cultivars, and that's what you see here is the variegation in the leaf color. And so you don't necessarily have to always get the dark green leaves. Sometimes leaves can be really, really dark in color. Sometimes they can be a little bit lighter green. Sometimes they can have the yellow coloration on the edges and so on.
Okay, that gives it a little bit of extra interest.
Yeah. This one here is called Pepperide. And what I wanted to point out here is that bract shape is not necessarily always the same. This bract shape that you see here is very lobed, and they call that an oak leaf bract.
Okay, so it has lots of points,
Yeah,
I guess.
and that is the traditional poinsettia bract shape. Now these others that you see here don't have the heavy lobing that you see with that one. They're more of a solid edge on the leaf.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of choices out there that people can make as far as what they want their plant to look like in their decorating scheme. You know, if they want it angular, if they want it rounded, if they want some color or whatever.
I guess also some of these bracts kind of set different. Like some of these may be more stiff, whereas some kind of, looks like this one kind of rounds out.
Right, and that's some of the things that we also look for as we do the trial. Sometimes the bracts will be very puckered, and you're seeing a little bit of puckering here, even more so here. These bracts have a lot less puckering, they're much more flat. And of course, as you said, the shape of the bracts and the way they lay are things that we look for too. One of the things that we really like to see is all of the bracts at the same height. And you're seeing that here, and you're seeing it pretty well here. As you look at these others, we're seeing some variability in the height. This one's a little bit higher than these others as we look here.
Is that because the stems are a little bit
The stems are a
taller?
little bit taller on these,
Okay.
shorter on these. That is considered undesirable by the breeders.
Okay.
They want to see a very uniform height in their bracts. And
Okay,
so that's another thing that they're kind of looking for in the trials.
All right. So in a typical pot, you will stick several cuttings or just one?
These plants that you see here are all in 6-inch pots, and they each had one cutting stuck.
Okay.
Now we have some plants that are in larger pots that we would use for a bigger area, bigger plant of course, and in most cases there we'll stick 3 cuttings to a pot.
Okay.
That gives us a fuller plant.
All right. Well, let's take a look at a few of these newer plants, some of these recently released cultivars, I guess.
All right.
Well, Dr. Cole, I really like this purple colored poinsettia. I think that is just so neat.
This is the Cultivar Plum Pudding, and it was new in our trial last year. Last year was the first year we had it, and it was not on the market last year. This year it is on the market. Some growers or some garden centers will have it in stock.
Good.
You'll notice that it does have the purple color. Over here we've got some red, and that is unusual for the cultivar. It's not what we would consider a normal situation. It is reverting back a little bit to the red. But some people are going to find that attractive, and some people maybe not so much.
Okay.
Of course, it's different than your typical red. You've got to have the right color scheme to make it fit, but it is really a nice cultivar. A little bit taller, a little bit later flowering than some of the others.
So this may be one that the grower may choose to put some of those growth retardants on.
Exactly, yes.
All right.
And that would not surprise me at all that they would put growth regulators on these. All right. Some of the others that we have here that are a little bit unusual, this one is Winter Rose Red, and it's one that's been on the market now for a few years. This is one of those cultivars that there's kind of a love-hate relationship with.
Okay.
People either really love that cultivar because of the unusual shape of the bracts. It almost looks like a rose instead of like a poinsettia.
I can see that.
Other people don't like it at all. It's not traditional. It does have the red color, but it doesn't look like a poinsettia, and so they don't like it. So we found that there's not really an in-between ground there. People like it or they hate it, but there's not an in-between.
All right.
Now there are some new winter rose cultivars out this year. This one is called Winter Rose Deep Pink.
Okay, it does look a little pinker than the other one.
And that's exactly right. That's the difference. You'll see the bracts are still the curly bracts like you see with the red, but it does have more of a pink hue. Now last year we had a Winter Rose Pink that's a lighter pink color, and that is available on the market. This is the first year in our trial for this one. I don't believe it's out on the market yet this year, but I would look for it next year.
Okay, one of those brand new ones.
One of the brand new ones.
Okay.
And then there's also a Jingle Bells. Now, Jingle Bells has a variegated leaf. You'll see some pink specking in there among the red, and that's typical for a Jingle Bells. There are Jingle Bells that are a traditional shape bract. Of course, this one has the winter rose shape with the Jingle Bells coloration.
So its full name would be Winter Rose Jingle Bells? Okay.
Yes. So again, this one's brand new in the trial, first year, and not available on the market yet, but I would look for it next year.
Okay. So a little speckled rose-shaped poinsettia.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you know, people usually think about red poinsettias, white poinsettias, maybe pink poinsettias, but there are poinsettias out there that are not what we typically think of. And we've talked about the plum pudding, but there are also ones that we call novelty poinsettias. And this one's called Amazon Peppermint or Amazon Peppermint. And you'll see that it's got some pink to it, but it's got some flecks in there that are a little bit unusual. Kind of a creamy background with pink in the cream and then some darker pink flecks. And so that would be one that we would consider a novelty cultivar. And again, you'd have to have just the right use for it, but they have some really pretty cultivars that are out of the ordinary.
Okay, I think I would tend to lean more towards some of these more unique plants because I'm always looking for the unique plants anyway.
Sure.
But, really like these.
And then we've got another one here that is what's considered a marble cultivar. And the reason that it's called a marble is because you see it's got two colors in the bracts. Usually the marbles have a creamy edge, and it may vary in width as to how much of the edge is creamy. And then it's got a more pink center. And so that's pretty standard for what we would consider a marble cultivar.
I really like this one with all those lobes or those points on the bracts. Also gives it that holly look, I think. Well, Dr. Cole, if someone is going out to purchase a poinsettia, could you tell us a little bit about what they would look for, some of the things they might think about?
Sure. Of course, you'd want to look for plenty of color, and you'd want to look at the flowers as well. You'll notice on this one that you've picked up here, the flowers, a lot of them are open. And that's good. We want to see some open flowers, but the more flowers you see that are open, and what I mean by open is you see the stamens showing there.
You can see a little bit of pollen even.
A little bit of
there.
pollen. The more of those flowers that are open, the more that plant has progressed through its flowering cycle. And so once it's finished flowering, it's kind of on the downhill turn. Now that doesn't mean that it's going to die tomorrow. It's still got a lot of life left to it. But if you want that plant to last through the Christmas season, you may want to buy one that's not quite so far along in its flowering process because it's going to last longer.
All right, so if you contrast that with something like this where you don't see any of those
exactly. None of those
stamens.
flowers are open, none of the stamens are showing, and so the plum pudding is a later flowering cultivar. This one's a very early flowering cultivar, and so subsequently, of course, its life is going to be similar.
And this one will bloom a little bit longer.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And what else should we think about on those cold days, maybe when we're out
Okay, of course we're out shopping in December, and of course that's the cold time of the year, the north wind blowing, and so you want to make sure that you protect your plants not only when they're in the greenhouse, but of course getting them to the car, getting them into the house, and then once you've got them in the house. And so you've picked up here what we call a sleeve. And we recommend that when you pick up your plants from the grower or from the greenhouse, that you have them sleeve your plant. And what that means is that they're going to pick that plant up and they're going to put it in here. This sleeve is open on the bottom, so the pot will actually come out the bottom, but this opening is just big enough that it will catch on that pot. And so most of the plant is going to be inside there. What that does is that protects it a little bit from the cold. And then also, because some of these plants tend to be kind of tall and top heavy, what happens is that the stems will sometimes break very easily from that weight, and so the sleeve helps as you're transporting them to keep that breakage from happening and hopefully get it home as a whole plant for you.
Okay, just kind of protects the plant till we get it
Exactly.
home. So once we get the plant home, anything special we need to do to maintain the plant?
Once you get the plant home, you want to keep it out of the drafts. Don't put it right by the front door where the wind's going to blow on it. You want to keep it away from like the heater vents and that type of thing. Keep it off the television set. We don't want the extreme heat. We don't want the extreme cold on it. We want to give it plenty of light, but I would probably keep it out of the direct sunlight. And then people always question, how do I water? That's always a really tough thing to do. And so what I look for is I look at the surface of the soil, and if it looks like it's beginning to dry, then that's when I water. So most of the time, a good rule of thumb is about once a week or so. You know, you don't want to go in and water it every day. Poinsettias don't like their roots to be really wet, and so you need to give them some time to dry out between waterings.
Okay, so the plant sitting on top of the TV is too hot, I guess.
It can get some heat from, like, if there's a VCR sitting there, sometimes the top of the VCR gets hot, sometimes the top of the TV will get hot.
Okay.
The other thing to think about, though, too, is you're going to be watering those.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
you know, you don't want to mess up your TV or your VCR by getting water in it as well.
Good point. Okay, well, if someone wants to keep their poinsettia through the Christmas season, through spring, throughout the summer, and then they're interested in trying to get it to bloom again the next year, what could they do?
Okay, poinsettias need to have long nights. The way we grow them here is we use the natural day lengths. We have no street lights around here or anything like that. We make sure all the lights are out in the greenhouse all the time. If they get night lighting, that's going to disrupt their flowering cycle. So as a homeowner or a consumer, what you might want to do is take that poinsettia and cover it at night at about the time the sun would be going down, and bring it out during the day when it would be light. Of course, one way to do that is by putting it in a closet or something like that. Or if you've got a room that you don't use, maybe a guest room that gets natural daylight but there's no street lights around, you could put it in that room and just kind of shut the door and let it do its thing. But keep in mind, if you have guests, then you're going to have to do something with that plant.
They can't turn the lights on?
Not at night,
okay,
or it's going to delay flowering.
Okay, well, it sounds like a lot of work to me, and I think what I would normally tend to do is just compost the poinsettia after it's done, and that way I would have more room next year to maybe grow some of these newer ones.
Yeah, there's new ones coming out all the time, so
Yeah.
there's some opportunities for some new things there.
Okay.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.